Good catchers are few and far between these days. Most often, you see them towards the bottom of the batting order, and most of them are defensively oriented, which is not the most exciting thing for the casual fan to watch. Catching is one of the few positions in baseball where sacrificing some offense for more defense is usually a good idea. Catchers are historically one of the less talented positions in the game, as there are only 19 current Hall of Famers that played catcher. That is second least only to third basemen, who have 17 in the Hall. Recently, however, there have been 3 pretty good players at the catcher position, and that number could definitely go up from 19 as it stands now. Those players are, of course, Joe Mauer, Buster Posey, and Yadier Molina. All 3 of these guys have a good case for the Hall of Fame, but they are far from unanimous. Some people don't think any of these guys should be in, those people being the small hall lovers. In other words, they want to keep the Hall of Fame only for the best of the best, and these guys don't fit the bill for them. It's a controversial topic, and many people have their opinions, but they all have their own individual case. Let's look at the case of Buster Posey first. There are some good aspects of Posey, but also a lot that is holding him back. First off, the rate stats. This is where Posey shines. These are stats like batting average, on-base percentage, slugging, OPS, stats that show how good you are on a per-at-bat basis. He has a career 129 OPS plus, which is outstanding for a catcher. He has a career slash line of 302, 372, 460. Having a career batting average over 300 is helping him a lot in his chances of making it. He also does very well in the award category. He won NL Rookie of the Year in 2010, an MVP in 2012, 7 All-Stars, 5 Silver Sluggers, 1 Gold Glove, and 1 batting title. The most important part of Posey's career, though, is the 3 World Series rings. Not many players win a World Series, let alone 3 in just a 5-year span. The downside to Posey, though, is his counting stats. He only has 1,500 hits and 158 home runs. That is because he only played 12 years and sat out the 2020 COVID year. He came back in 2021, hit over 300, and had an OPS of 140 while making the All-Star game after sitting out an entire season at the age of 34. He retired after that season to spend time with his family, and also said that he just wasn't enjoying baseball as much anymore. Each game was getting more and more painful, and that is partially due to playing the catcher position his entire career. It is definitely the most grueling position to play on the diamond, and he played 6 straight years of at least 140 games at the position. A whole rule was made just because of a collision he was involved in. The longevity and the counting stats really hold him back, but he only played for one team his entire career, won 3 World Series, and was a fan favorite every year he played. Looking at some more modern metrics, Posey racked up a career 44 B-WAR over his 12-year span, which is pretty low if you're looking to get into the Hall of Fame. The average B-WAR of a catcher in the Hall of Fame is 54, so Posey is well below that. Looking at the 7-year peak B-WAR, a stat to measure how great somebody was during their prime, Posey has 36.6, while the average Hall of Fame catcher is 34.7. These stats once again show how the longevity is really the only thing holding him back. When trying to predict Posey's Hall of Fame possibility, it's hard not to compare him to Thurman Munson. He was another catcher who had a relatively short career. Munson died in a plane crash while he was just 32 and was easily on pace to become a Hall of Fame catcher. He put up 46 B-WAR in just 11 seasons, won 2 World Series, an MVP, 7 All-Stars, and had a career OPS plus of 116. He had 1,558 career hits and 113 home runs. Very similar to Posey. Posey has him beat in the rate stats by a considerable margin, and if you look at just the numbers, this would pretty much mean Posey has absolutely no chance at making the Hall of Fame, especially because Munson was not elected. But that was almost 40 years ago. Nowadays, some voters understand the physical struggle of playing the catcher position and that longevity isn't just going to come at that position anymore. Some voters will want more catcher representation in the Hall and will easily put Posey in. One thing that voters are a sucker for is the playoff success, and Posey had a lot of it. While I don't think Posey will be a first ballot Hall of Famer, I would expect him to get in at some point. The playoff success and an offensive peak behind the plate will be the driving factor. Somebody whose longevity is not an issue is Yadier Molina. In fact, it is one of the reasons why he's considered for the Hall. Molina is basically the complete inverse of Posey, with his rate stats being not that good, while his counting stats are somewhat better. With over 2,100 hits, over 1,000 RBIs, and a 42.1 career WAR, those are great numbers for a catcher. On the other hand, his career slash line of 277, 327, and 399 is not all that spectacular. His career OPS plus of just 95 suggests that he was a below average hitter for his career, since 100 OPS plus is average. But as we know, Molina won't be getting into the Hall of Fame for his offensive production. Having 9 gold gloves and 4 platinum gloves means that he was voted the best defensive catcher in the NL 9 times and the best defender, period, 4 times. Being the captain of the Cardinals, one of the more decorated franchises in MLB history for the last decade plus, really helps his Hall of Fame chance. Winning 2 World Series alongside Albert Pujols also doesn't hurt his chances. The biggest thing holding Molina back is the numbers, and more specifically the modern ones like WAR, with his career B-WAR of just 42.1 being well under that of an average Hall of Fame catcher of 53.6, that points him to not being in the Hall. To keep it simple, the numbers don't say that Molina is a Hall of Famer, but really with him, you have to look past that. He is one of, if not the best defensive catcher of all time. He led the NL in total zone runs at catcher 8 times and was second 4 times. This number combines multiple defensive stats into one conglomerate that tells you how valuable someone is defensively. He is probably the best defensive catcher of all time and led to an influx of defensive catchers that we see in the league now. And I think, for that reason, he has the best chance out of these 3 to make the Hall. Now, for the final of 3, Joe Mauer. Mauer is the healthiest combination of counting stats and rate stats, with 2,100 hits, 143 home runs, and a 55.2 career B-WAR, while also having a career batting average of 306. His career OPS plus was 124, well above league average and especially above average for a catcher. Now, that brings us to the problem. In 2013, Mauer suffered a bad concussion that knocked him out for 30 games. Deciding he didn't want to risk injury like that again and possibly cause permanent damage, he chose to play first base exclusively for the remainder of his career. This means he only played 8 full seasons behind the plate. Now, what's the problem with that? Well, if you want to get into the Hall of Fame playing first base, the bat has to be there, and only 2,100 hits and less than 150 home runs is not the ideal stat line for a Hall of Fame first baseman. Catchers hold a lot more value positionally, so their bat doesn't have to do that much. At first base, defense is very low on the priority list as it doesn't make much impact on the game. First baseman's job is to hit, and a 124 OPS plus is not really a Hall of Fame hitter. But we can't ignore the years he did play behind the plate. Mauer won 5 Silver Sluggers and 3 Gold Gloves, along with an MVP behind the dish. He appeared in 6 All-Star games at the position as well. Unlike Posey and Molina, Mauer did not have success in the playoffs. He never even made it to a World Series and only had 44 career postseason plate appearances and racked up a measly 641 OPS. While this isn't that big of a deal, postseason success has helped a lot of players get in the Hall in the past, and the absence of it shouldn't hurt him, but it certainly won't help him. One thing that he has going for him is that he's a hometown kid. He was born in St. Paul, Minnesota, was drafted first overall by the Twins, and played his entire career there. That can only help him. I don't know how much it will, but it might help him. The biggest problem with Mauer is the lack of success as a team, and he just doesn't stick out as one of those iconic catchers of the game like Posey and Molina do. I would love to see Mauer in the Hall, as injuries forced him out of the catcher position and significantly hindered his chances. If I had to bet $100,000 on one of these guys to not make it, it would have to be on Mauer. I would hope I don't do that because I think all 3 of these guys should get in eventually, but Mauer probably has the lowest chance. Let me know what you think. All 3 should get in, or none. Appeal to the modern game where catchers don't play as much and are not slugging the ball out of the ballpark, and longevity shouldn't be really a factor when considering a catcher for the Hall of Fame, or appeal to the old-fashioned grit and grind. Back in my day, I used to play catcher every day for 25 straight years. We'll see what happens in a few years, but in my opinion, all 3 should be in.